Right. Test my video. Test, mic test. Jessie testing from home. And these are leads. I put down the phone, huh? Okay. Okay, bye. Hi, these are lead stories. Prime Minister pays tribute to frontliners in Eid al-Adha message, and the government makes changes to SOPs under phase 1. Just have a phone call. Hello. 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 All right. I'm just checking. So this is the first time we're doing it from home, actually. So that was the studio getting in touch with me. But yes, back to the show. Government makes changes to SOPs under phase 1 and 2 of the PPN. Now, on the show today, I'll be speaking to, of course, a technology analyst on current COVID situation. Bobby Varanasi will join me. As usual, I'm Jessie Chahal. You're watching this edition of The Nation Update. That's right. Tough times call for tough measures. And here we are, the team working behind the scenes and from home. Let's begin with this. Earlier today, the Prime Minister, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, joined a congregation of about 300 people to perform the Eid al-Adha prayer at the National Mosque. Now, the Prime Minister and his wife were received upon arrival at about 8:16 a.m. by the Minister and the Prime Minister's Department for Religious Affairs, Datuk Sri Dr. Zulkifli Muhammad, and the National Mosque Grand Imam Ehsan Muhammad Hosni. And on another note, of course, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, the Prime Minister, in a special Hari Raya Eid al-Adha message, has paid tribute to the nation's frontliners who have tirelessly carried out their duties to aid the nation in, of course, this ongoing battle against COVID-19. Now, the Prime Minister has said this. He has likened the dedication showed by the frontliners to the sacrifices made by the Prophet Ibrahim and his son, Prophet Ismail. Prime Minister also stressed on the importance of maintaining SOPs and, of course, discipline during the Hari Raya Eid al-Adha celebration. He is at this point, he has set his mindset on herd immunity and for all of us to collectively achieve that by December. Now, the Prime Minister, still with him and Hari Raya Eid al-Adha, he has likened the sacrifice made in complying with the standard operating procedures to contain this pandemic, such as not crossing state borders and not having visitations during Hari Raya Eid al-Adha as a great jihad, he says, a holy war to save lives. Although the government had enforced several restrictions set by the National Security Council or MKN, the celebrations can be joyful nonetheless. Well, here's a word from the Deputy Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob. He has reminded Muslims who performs the Hari Raya Eid al-Adha prayers today to adhere to standard operating procedures. That's those words again, SOPs stipulated by religious authorities in their respective states. And Ismail Sabri hopes that the people would take heed of the meaning of sacrifice from this year's Eid al-Adha celebration to work together so that we can all help to flatten the COVID-19 infection curve and assist the country to fully recover from the pandemic. Now, that aside, the government has made several changes to SOPs for phase 1 and phase 2, that being under the National Recovery Plan involving the services, logistics and social sectors following positive development on the national vaccination rate. Now, according to the Deputy Prime Minister, for phase 1, attendance at government offices will be increased to 40%, subject to instructions from the Chief Secretary to the government. Meanwhile, the accounting services are also allowed to operate at 60% capacity. So we are seeing some relaxation here. Some other key key points from the Deputy Prime Minister in terms of what can open up. Ports, airports, and logistics sector are allowed to operate 24 hours. Operations of daily and public markets are extended from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. depending on your local authority. So be sure to check on that. Operating hours for fresh markets are from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's a relief. Cycling and individual activities that could practice physical distancing of 2 to 3 meters are also allowed in phase one of this national recovery plan. But this all is subject to cycling within the neighborhood. So that still doesn't mean you can go far, far, as they say. Now, the country's COVID-19 vaccination rate surpassed 400,000 doses administered again yesterday, with a total of 424,936 shots given out. This is a huge increase from the 344,000 doses, in total that were administered on Sunday, July 18. The country is aiming to raise its national vaccination rate to around 500,000 daily in order to reach its target of vaccinating the entire adult population come October. So we've got a plan, we're sticking to it. In fact, we're ramping it up. Now, according to Perlis Menteri Besar Dr. Sri Azlan Man, Perlis will be moving into phase 3 of the National Recovery Plan very soon. Azlan Man says this followed the level of vaccination in the state, which has achieved 36.1%. He's also clarifying that Perlis is still, or rather needs another 3.9% vaccination among the adult population to enable the state to move into the phase 3 of the National Recovery Plan, or PPN. Now, Perlis is among 8 states now at phase 2. The other states are Perak, Pahang, Kelantan, Terengganu, Penang, Sabah, and Sarawak. So great relief there as things are opening up. But at this point, I'd like to bring in my guests. I would say normally joining me in the studio, but joining me online right now, of course, to weigh in on the current pandemic situation, Bobby Vernasi, technology analyst. Hi, Bobby. How's it going? I can finally say that I too am working from home. It feels good.
Welcome, welcome to the dark side. Actually, as you get used to it, it'll be difficult to go back.
It is true. It is true. It can get perhaps too comfortable at some point. But let's take a quick look at what we've been seeing in recent news. So, Prime Minister says they're considering a movement-controlled relaxation for those who have received 2 vaccine doses. We also know that there are many among us who've already got their 2 vaccine doses. The Deputy Prime Minister is saying the country is expected to move into phase 2 of the National Recovery Plan come early August. Now, that's not too far away. 10 days, give and take, or give or take. Now, the daily COVID-19 vaccination rate also, on that note, has exceeded the world average, Bobby. Malaysia on the right track to achieve herd immunity. We know the Prime Minister has also reiterated that that is his main agenda right now. We have one of the fastest vaccination rates. All this has been, of course, the news trending in the week gone by as well. But from your perspective, is Malaysia on the right track, Bobby?
See, it's a pretty straightforward question with an extremely complex answer, right? You go back into the last year, a lot of things most government states, Malaysia included, was to try and flatten the curve. That was our primary emphasis. And we had to impose restrictions of the order and scale that we have seen in the past to be able to flatten the curve. What we have seen on the other end, unfortunately, while those efforts were largely successful, the mutations of the virus, there are 138 odd mutations right now, right, have not allowed us to really hit that curve, the flattening of the curve. So I think what Malaysia did, not pivoting, but really realigning itself to the new reality of a variety of mutations, a variety of variants, is to start looking at a larger perspective than just a clamp down, right? And what we're seeing is there's a surge even in the vaccination rates. The effective national recovery plan is actually significantly a lot more comprehensive than the MCOs were. So if you put all of that in context, I think it's on the right track to answer your question. Will we be able to really flatten it out? I will hold my bets because I think the rest of the world, everybody is struggling with these new variants. But what at least gives us is a significant hope that the first massive wave over an 18-month window, we grow over the hurdle by the end of December. We'll have to ready ourselves for a new future where perhaps these variants will continue to be amongst us for a long, long time. And I think we haven't started thinking on those lines as yet. There is sufficient scientific evidence that is insufficient right now. But I'm sure in 6 months from now, The conversations would be about the variants and how do we tackle their potential implications going into the future. So it's the right track,
So
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, absolutely the right track. But on the flip side, though, we're hearing a lot of news on social media. Everyone seems to be, quite negative about things. How do you think we are managing the pandemic? Where are we if there's a checkpoint or a milestone? I.e., how should the government work with all of this, especially in triaging what to do next?
So if we look at the initial 9 months when the Minister of Health, held a daily press conference almost, right, and he gave tits and bits of dates, and I think those were extremely crucial inputs for an average citizen on the street to understand what is important and what the government is doing at the back end. Over time, those conversations have become less and less. I think they've become very, very sporadic. The updates have gone towards responding to the social media's reactions to MCO, as opposed to still parlaying out the real information that the governments have a much better knowledge of. We unfortunately have not communicated enough about the mutations itself. I think 90% of the population still does not understand that this virus has actually mutated so many times. We still don't know. We think it's just one virus. See, that level of information, we have to start educating. We have to simplify it, dumb it down, but we have to educate. That is when you'll start seeing that the lambasting on social media will get reduced a lot because there is more awareness. Today we are fighting something that we really either have no clue of and we are unwilling to appreciate its complexity. So I think the government is doing a fair enough good job. I would think that the academic institutions, media like yourselves, and perhaps the larger scientific community need to start talking to the citizenry more. We need to start bringing in some more of these small bits and pieces of information to the larger public, because the
Well,
government alone.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, to take that sort of leaf out of your point, this is what the team and I, we strive for every day to bring verified and right news to the people, but also giving them a perspective from the other side. It's easier to perhaps you know say a lot of things even on social media, but how do you unpack this? How do you break it down? How do you understand really the gravity of what it takes to make something move or something work, right? Speaking of which, you of course are, you work with the international circuit. What are investors looking out for, or rather what are some of their concerns looking into Malaysia?
See, the concerns haven't been any different pre-COVID as they are post-COVID. The concerns have always been around geopolitical stability, the strength or weakness of the currency, the stable political environment. These continue to be top line items for investors even today. Maybe we have taken a little bit of a beating when it comes to the perception around political stability. And I know we will not go into those details, but I don't think it has created a spanner in the works for investors looking to invest in Malaysia. What has been added to that pile of their expectations is how resilient are we, how resilient are our businesses, and what are the policy side of resilient enablers that are also being created. And I think so far there has not been any adverse reaction to all that Malaysia has done. And I think the last piece of the puzzle might be is once we just get the parliament opened up, and I know it will open up this month. See, any of those nagging doubts that that we have heard in the past few weeks, a lot of nonsense being spoken about. Any of that little nagging doubts will completely go away, and the function of a stable government and the structurally strong governance will no longer be questioned. And I think we are on the right track. So I'm just hoping that we just go through this month and we get over that last piece of the puzzle. Investors are fine.
Then it's freedom, is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily freedom, but I think it's an assurance of continuity of a structured, robust, what you call a social legal environment with an economic enablement, right? Driven by the rule of law, driven by checks and balances. So, and then the parliament is always a massive representation of that. I mean, and anywhere in the world, it is not just Malaysia. And many of them have done what they did in order to respond to exigencies. And as we are
But
stabilizing, get there.
it's
Yeah.
a
So
it's been a day since Freedom Day over on the other side of the world. In your opinion, Bobby, what is it looking like in the UK, and also in Scotland?
I can't say much about Scotland, but I think, see, UK's vaccination rates are higher, much higher. They're sitting at about 58%. So I think a lot of relaxations are coming to play. And I would think that a lot of the countries will start following suit. Germany is following suit. US and Canada have already followed suit. Italy is beginning to open up, I think, from next month onwards. So, as the consequence of a fully vaccinated population, what are the sizes? And I think the minimum trigger point is 50%. You will start seeing a lot of economic sectors opening up, those that have been significantly languishing. And so, do we call it freedom, or do we call it, reset? I don't know, but I think I would rather use the word freedom because we are free to do the right things that we have messed up in the past. So that's a great opportunity for us to do a fundamental reset as well. But that's it's a lot more inherently complex when it comes to sector related opening
True.
up. So we will have to wait and watch.
Okay, well, lately there seems to be a lot of mix and match going on of information on social media and, of course, mainstream news as well. What is your idea or suggestion to the government to quote unquote win the war? There are multiple things happening at the same time, but of course, the big end goal or the end game is for us to first and foremost get out of this crisis that we're in. But having said that, a lot of noise as well. So, what's your idea or suggestion, Bobby?
See, if you think of it as from a dictatorial standpoint, you could clamp everybody down, right? It doesn't work. So let's take it's a democratic nation. So what you're going to have to deal with is the noise will remain. It will not go away. I don't think it is going to go away ever anymore. The platforms are way too much in terms of their outreach. People have way too many opinions anyway. A lot of it, most of it is uninformed. So the only way you're going to counter it is through information. So what I would think is that the Ministry of Information and Communication probably has a much larger role to play than just managing that sector, that industry of information and communications. I think they have a much larger role to play in dissemination of information in the right form and manner, in eliminating any rumor mongering, and in providing sufficient evidence as well, right? So that any speculation can be curtailed at the butt. So I would think that for Malaysian government, my recommendation to that Ministry of Information and Comms would be is take on that larger role beyond just the management of the industry, is to really communicate with your people because they are all connected, right? So you have to use all channels possible, but the messaging has to be consistent and it has to be simple and it has to reach the last man on the street. I think
True,
that's
true.
what I would expect the government to do.
Agreed in that sense that the messaging must be there. But I think we've seen to a large extent, especially in the past few weeks as well, everything gets sort of pegged back to the national immunization program and the national recovery plan as well. So that being sort of the beacon or the benchmark, it's easy then to relate everything to that as a guide for all of us, the rest of us to follow. But what we're seeing is okay, sectors are loosening up, things are opening up, but people are also finding it hard to hold on, especially if you're a business operator. People have tried, and we've spoke about this many times as well, trying to transform the business from brick and mortar going online. That in itself has its own hurdles and obstacles. But it's been a year and a half plus almost that we've been in this situation. What are some of the trends you are seeing, and what do you think perhaps can still be done if there's anything left that people can apply to their businesses, livelihoods as well?
I think, one thing I would definitely want us to appreciate before we get into the question proper is if you take a country like Iran, for example, right, and then just as a case in point, what Iran has not done and what it has translated to, for example, it is an unfortunate mess of over 70% unemployment, right? And businesses there are hardly any businesses now, they're completely dead. People are, dying on the streets. And there is so much of misery and fatigue in the system because the government was unable to do all the stuff that you've seen Malaysian government do. Right. I like the honorable finance minister's recent response to the Bloomberg article. Right. I think a week ago, he spent a lot of time and effort and took pains to explain a lot of things. But I think his top line view that $530 billion of investment that the government has committed to in a variety of programs over the last 12, 14 months, it is there in the system. And that's what allowed us to avoid a massive shock, for example, that actually Iran is facing. I think we may have to, step back a bit and say, what else could have happened if the government had not done what it did. I think they did a phenomenal job with all those programs. It was a lot confusing at times. People were complaining, some got it, some didn't get it, notwithstanding any of those operational realities. A lot of that was actually enabling, supporting these businesses. Banks and of course have also tried to support to a certain extent, not always. But now we have reached a point where these SMEs, I think, have finally understood the need to transform. So
Yeah.
if they're not going to do it any longer now, I don't think anybody can help them. That's the reality.
Yeah.
For 30 years, we've been telling SMEs that you have to transform, you have to transform. They did not.
It's now or never, Bobby.
Now or never, yeah, now or never. Take it or you're finished,
Absolutely.
and nobody's going to cry over you.
Okay, we are almost finished as well in terms of our time.
Yeah.
But very quickly, before I let you go, what lessons can we learn from the UK as they mark Freedom Day? In fact, that on 19th of July, so just yesterday.
I can't think of anything specific. Well, we have our own Independence Day coming up. I would like to think of more on those lines. What would we be doing differently starting first of September? I
Yeah.
really want to focus on that. Frankly, I think we've reached a point, 65 years. Let's think of what we will do differently from 1st September 2021 as a nation, as a people. I think it's much, much more liberating to have that conversation than to take a leaf off someone else's lessons. I think we have had enough of those anyway.
True. Thank you so much, Bobby, for weighing in and sharing your perspective as well. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Of course, that was Bobby Varanasi joining us on this edition of the Nation Update. And moving on, tens of thousands of vaccinated Muslim pilgrims circled Islam's holiest site in Mecca on Sunday, but remained socially distant and, of course, wore masks as the coronavirus takes its toll on Hajj for the second year running this year as well. The same position last year in terms of being in this crisis as well. But previously, drawing some 2.5 million Muslims from all walks of life across the globe. This year, Saudi Arabia, home to Islam's holiest sites in Mecca and Medina, has barred worshippers from abroad for a second year running and has restricted entry from within the kingdom under special conditions to guard against the coronavirus and, of course, its new variants as well. Robots have been deployed to spray sanitizing disinfectant around the cube-shaped Kaaba's busiest walkways. Cleaners as well are sanitizing the vast white marble spaces of the Grand Mosque that houses the Kaaba several times a day as well. And moving on, the French government is going ahead with its new plan to fight new COVID-19 infections and relieve the pressure that could again submerge hospitals. Now, according to a government spokesperson, the measures, which include requiring a health pass in a wide array of venues from the start of August and making vaccination mandatory for health workers, will still account for some of the toughest in Europe. Now, the health pass provides proof that a person has been vaccinated against COVID-19, has recently had a negative coronavirus test, or has newly recovered from the virus. Well, that brings me to the end of the hour on this program. Thank you so much for joining me. Of course, we had a bit of teething issues as we come to you live from home. Part of the crew still in the studio, hoping to bring you some of the latest updates as well as we work from home and try to all comply to the MCO. And if you have any information that you'd like to share with us or you would like to comment on, visit our social media pages. We are all there, of course. This being an extremely important day for the Muslims. And so once again, to all our Muslim friends, thank you and wishing you a very Selamat Hari Raya Aidil Adha. Remember, kita jaga kita. And that's it from me, Jessie Chahal, on this edition of the Nation Update. Be sure to keep it locked on to Bernama as we bring you more updates and share more information with you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.